there are prisons, and then there are places built to erase you. No trails. No hope, no way out. In one of history's darkest prisons, people didn't serve time, they disappeared into it. No one was meant to survive. Not the cold, not the hunger, not the silence. And those who entered were never supposed to leave. But one story slipped through the cracks. A story of suffering, isolation, and something even worse. A place designed not to hold prisoners, but to break them completely. Far from any city, hidden beyond reach, there stood a prison unlike any other. It wasn't built to rehabilitate. It wasn't even built to contain. It was built to end people slowly. The structure itself felt wrong. Massive stone walls rose high into the sky, blocking out light. Narrow slits replaced windows, allowing just enough air to keep someone alive. But never enough comfort. Inside, the corridors stretched endlessly, cold and silent. Every step echoed, reminding anyone who walked them that this place was not meant for life. Prisoners arrived without warning. No public records, no official announcements, just names that quietly vanished from the outside world. Those who were brought here quickly realized something terrifying. This wasn't a prison with sentences. There was no release date, no appeal, no second chance. Each cell was small, damp, and isolated. Thick doors sealed shut with a finality that echoed through the halls. Once inside, the connection to the outside world was completely cut off. At first, prisoners tried to resist. They shouted. They demanded answers. They held on to hope. But the prison had a way of crushing that. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into something unrecognizable. The cold seeped into their bones. The silence grew louder than any noise. And slowly, one by one, the voices faded. Because this place didn't need violence to destroy people. It used something far more effective. Isolation. And the worst part? Everyone inside eventually understood the same truth. They weren't meant to survive. At first, they held on to hope. Every new prisoner did. They believed this place had rules. That someone somewhere was keeping track. That there would be questions, investigations, maybe even a way out. But that illusion didn't last long. Days passed without explanation. No one came to speak to them. No names were called. No doors opened. Only the routine remained, if it could even be called that. Food arrived without words. Pushed through small openings, just enough to keep them alive. Water was limited. Light barely existed. Time completely disappeared. Inside those walls, there was no day or night, just existence. Some prisoners tried to mark the days, scratching lines into stone, counting breaths, whispering numbers to themselves. But eventually, even that became pointless, because nothing changed. Not the silence, not the isolation, not their fate. And that's when the real punishment began. Not physical pain, but mental collapse. They started hearing things. Faint footsteps in empty corridors. Voices that weren't there. Echoes of a world they could barely remember. Some spoke to themselves, just to hear a human voice again. Others stopped speaking completely, because in a place like this, the mind becomes your greatest enemy. Memories fade, thoughts blur, reality shifts, and slowly, painfully, hope begins to die. One by one, prisoners stopped waiting, stopped expecting, stopped believing anyone even knew they were there. Because the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a place you escaped. It was a place that erased you. After enough time, the prison no longer needed to do anything. Because the damage was already done. The walls didn't move. The doors didn't open. The guards barely spoke. And yet, something inside the prisoners was slowly collapsing. It started with small things. Forgetting words. Losing track of thoughts mid-sentence. Struggling to remember faces, even their own. Without human contact, the mind begins to turn inward. And in that silence, it creates its own reality. Some prisoners began to see things. Figures moving in the corners of their cells. Shadows that didn't belong. Moments where the darkness itself felt alive. Others became convinced they weren't alone. They whispered to invisible companions, argued with voices no one else could hear, reached out to nothing. But the most terrifying change wasn't madness. It was emptiness. The moment when a prisoner stopped reacting completely. No more shouting, no more pacing, no more resistance, just stillness, as if the person inside had already left. Their bodies remained, sitting in the same corners, staring at the same walls, but their minds had gone somewhere else entirely. Even the guards noticed it, but they didn't intervene, because this was expected. This was the design. The prison didn't break people all at once. It erased them slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to fight. And in that hollow silence, the truth became undeniable. Survival here didn't mean staying alive. It meant losing everything that made you human. Not everyone lasted long. Some broke within days. Others held on for weeks, maybe months. But eventually, the outcome was always the same. The prison didn't need to act quickly. Time did the work for it. One by one, cells grew quieter. At first, it was subtle. A voice that used to echo through the corridor, suddenly gone. A prisoner who once paced endlessly, now completely still. Then came the silence that followed. No movement, no sound, no sign of life. The guards would come eventually, not with urgency, not with concern, just routine. They opened the doors, looked inside, and removed what remained. No names were spoken, no records updated, just another absence. And then the door would close again, as if nothing had happened. For the prisoners still alive, this was the most terrifying part. Not the death itself, but how normal it had become. No reactions, no grief, no acknowledgement, because showing emotion here was dangerous. It reminded you of what you were losing, so they stopped reacting, stopped caring, stopped feeling, and in doing so, they survived a little longer, but at a cost, because every time someone disappeared, a piece of everyone else disappeared with them, until the line between living and not living began to blur. And in that place, one truth stood above everything else. You didn't need to die to be gone. No one was meant to survive. That was the unspoken rule. The design of the prison made it clear, this place didn't release people. It erased them. Slowly, completely, without leaving a trace. And yet, one did. No one knows exactly how long he was there. By the time they found him, time had already taken everything else. His body was still alive, barely. Thin, fragile, moving only when necessary. But his eyes, they told a different story. There was no recognition in them. No fear. No relief. No understanding. Just emptiness. When the door opened, he didn't react the way they expected. He didn't rush forward. Didn't speak. Didn't even seem to notice that anything had changed. It was as if the world outside that cell no longer existed to him. They brought him out anyway, into light, into open space, into a reality he once belonged to. But it didn't matter, because whatever part of him could live in that world was already gone. People tried to understand what had happened, asked questions, searched for answers, but there were none. No records, no timeline, no explanation. Just a man who had survived something he was never supposed to survive. And in the end, that was the most terrifying truth of all. The prison didn't fail. It worked perfectly, because even though his body escaped, everything that made him human did not.